This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For May 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends On Topic. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure with the AV SuperFriends. My name is Chris Decter, and joined today by Mark, Larry, Justin, Jamie, and Rachel. The whole crew is here for you today.
Yay!
Justin is currently on a phone call.
No, I'm off. I got
Justin is off
I'm
his
good.
phone call. You made it.
My bad.
Just in time.
It's just in time with Justin. Next time someone calls in, Justin, just conference them straight into our recording, and we'll all be there.
It depends on who it is. I might just do that.
We can get to the issue real fast.
End that conversation right quick. So,
and there will be our segment Super Fired with Justin Rexing.
Yet again.
So this month's topic is AV and IT, and whatever that means. And I think we talked about this before the show, kind of how we want to approach this, and what's our general kind of what lens we're gonna put this in. I think where we decided to land on this is we probably need to define AV and IT, and kind of how those are set up and what that means. But I think we'd at least first point out that IT and AV are spelled differently. Most importantly, AV is first in the alphabet. So
it's most important.
It's most important first in our
I
hearts.
don't even know why this is a topic anymore. I'm serious.
Well, it's usually a topic because of networking, and we're going to deliberately make the editorial decision to try to stay away from the networking conversation as much as possible and focus on all the other aspects of IT and AV. So maybe let's take a run at this definition of IT and AV. Let's define IT. So if IT would be what? The generic use of information technology in the sense where it's the ability to manipulate and send and share information with other people at your organization. I mean, is that fair, or do we need to be a little more granular on that?
You mean printers? You just said printers,
I think it's
right?
really I think it's really interesting that you're right on that information technology, right? But it's kind of morphed from being the computer geeks to the network geeks.
Well,
it's such a floating definition that how come nerds, we define everything? Look at a program, for God's sakes. The first thing that comes out of it is define, and we can't even define our own product.
So communication tool sets.
It's an umbrella. It's just an umbrella that, exactly like you said, it's a tool set. I mean, we have on our campus a guy that works for our parking department that doesn't work for IT, and he is a quote-unquote IT consultant, and he works on the parking meters that are monitored so they know when someone's there without paying. So we have all this stuff that's part of IT that, like Chris said in the beginning, AV and IT, and really what people are talking about is AV and networking.
I was hoping that conversation was putting
things.
Cars in the right spot, like defragging a hard drive. That's what I was seeing, but that's not where it went.
It's not to move cars around a parking lot physically.
Yeah.
So let me back up. So
IT also encompasses like not just the network, but the devices that people are allowed to have, the security profiles on those devices.
Yeah, so I wanted to clarify that. I think Jamie brought up that it's computers and printers and networking, and a lot of people start there. There's a lot more to it. There's software development, there's project management, there's security aspects to it. So there's a lot more going on there as part of the general kind of generic IT. Now, from the computer standpoint, because yes, a lot of times that's from a customer standpoint, you're interacting with probably your PC support group. But if you think historically, what you're looking at is the idea of these larger computers. Back when computers were only, they took up a city block and they were affordable only by the 3 richest kings in Europe. You had an entire team there to run those. But at the same time, everything was dependent upon some sort of client-server operation network. And then as mini and then micro computers came along, that put that computing power at someone's individual desk. So that's kind of changed the paradigm. And now we're kind of back to cloud computing, where you're going back to a centralized server to handle the vast majority of your processing. But we're still using that kind of that paradigm. So if we consider IT this larger as Justin said, an umbrella, and that's probably a good way to think of it, an umbrella of any sort of information-related delivery services in any way, shape, or form, whether you're processing locally, developing software to manage those, or network to transport that.
Or AV backbones to deliver it to a projector, right?
Potentially, but there's a lot of aspects to it. Larry, go ahead.
And I really like the umbrella illustration because it encompasses all the silos within IT. And I think that's the paradigm a lot of universities I've been to. There is such specialization within the IT department itself, and that really distinguishes it from the AV group, I think. Where in most universities, the AV group touches everything.
Yeah.
Except for printers.
So, yeah.
We do printers too.
Now you guys are just taking stuff right off my notes.
Your projectors
here.
print directly to the printers over the network, right?
We've defined IT. Let's define AV. And AV would be in the sense where I would say it as any sort of content that has both or either or has aspects of a visual component, a sight component, and an auditory component. And that's about as far as I want to go. Anything beyond that, you're starting to nitpick within what I would consider AV. So AV is also one of these wide umbrellas of a lot of kind of content aspects. Is that fair to say at the highest level that that's AV, or do we need to kind of weasel that in?
In a university context, I think it's AV for larger than just one person to consume. Right, because IT departments say, well, you can see the screen, you can hear the computer speakers. I think it's in our context, it's the larger deployment of that.
So wherever more than two of you gather in AV's name, AV shall be there, sort of thing. Is that what we're getting at?
Kinda. Two virtually as well, because you can stream out to multiple recipients, and they could all individually see it, but that still encompasses us.
Screens and speakers and microphones.
Well, and I think
larger than an office.
But the point being, it's all for the manipulation and delivery and creation of content in that sense.
Idea, delivery, and creation.
I think
I like that. I like that. The including in the delivery and creation.
Yeah, and this is something I've said before, and something that sets us apart from other IT folks is we deliver, content through the environment and electronics, right? We are the glue that binds the environment and electronics. Networking does that a little bit. Our security team does that a little bit with cameras, but they're so focused on this one thing in the environment, WAPs, like I said, camera lenses and focus points and things like that. We have to deal with all of it, right?
First of all, what have I told you guys about WAPs? Second of all, I think that's a good point. I think that I was wondering earlier if we should encompass also elements like lighting in our definition of
environment.
Of AV.
So Rachel, you're going to love this.
Part of how we create content through the environment.
So you're going to love this next point. I'm going to pick a fight here with the entire IT industry. Here we go. And I'm going to win. I'm going to win immediately. So based on these definitions of IT, the larger IT umbrella encompassing these different aspects of, there's desktop and network and security and programming, but then the AV also has touches into a lot of that. You could make the argument, I'm going to do it right now, that AV is the most IT of all IT departments because we touch everything under that umbrella and more. Justin brought up the physical spaces and acoustics and hardware, and Richie just brought up lighting. There's all these additional aspects that kind of go into that physical and like design space realm that also falls under AV in a lot of cases, I think, for a lot of us. And so if we're part of IT, but AV does everything that IT does in some way, shape, or form, AV does, and more, we're the most IT of all IT.
Yeah, and this what really bugs me about this, and it's really kind of been a burr for me for a while, is that tell me the last time that AV wasn't IT. 25 years ago?
I think we brought this up in a recent show that there's a lot of schools out there who still operate from the library, the media center, the TV production group, or whatever. So
governed by the Dewey Decimal System.
I just, considering I'm married to a librarian who's a school librarian, and she doesn't want anything to do with it. That's why she has me, right? But I look at it, and it's that for me, it's that stupid industry question that this keeps popping up, right? Is AV really part of IT? Well, hell yes, it is. It has been since MP3.
Well, the people that argue against it are scared because they think they're taking, this thing like IT's taking over our jobs. It's like, no, they're not.
Quick question. It was like, when was the last time you had to push in a cart?
Like with tools on it?
No, like a TV cart.
Overhead projector.
Right?
Well, in the land of COVID, everyone has carts, so we're back to that.
Mark deals with broadcast. When was the last time you didn't have a broadcast that involved the computers and a network?
No, yeah, never.
I'm a nerd, but I'm a lot of different kinds of nerd, but I'm a word nerd first. And I would say that like there was no point when AV wasn't a part of IT, because when you break it down semantically, if you're talking about information technology from its very inception, AV has been about using information to disseminate technology. That is the whole purpose of the entire field, from the first time somebody put a candle behind a piece of paper to project an image on a wall so that it would be larger. But I think that, because AV has always operated in meat space in a way that IT has not.
What kind of space?
Meat space, like the
like
physical
a butcher
world
shop?
as opposed to that kind.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or like the Las Vegas show.
Both. Well, the spaces with human meat bag bodies in them, Jamie.
All right, move on.
But are we back on WAPs?
Yes.
I'm just asking, are we back on WAPs?
Somehow we are.
Sorry,
this is
Rachel,
on topic show, by the way. On topic.
Yeah, this is on topic, not off the
and-
rails. So we need to ratchet in on our
Yes. My point
random asides
is that it's and I'm sure we're getting there, that the difference is more cultural than it is a domain of expertise. There's this culture of artistry within AV and this culture of systemization within IT, and people who see themselves as artists are having trouble adapting to a paradigm where systems are dominant.
Well, and so yes, there is definitely a cultural difference there, I think, and that's something that you're seeing in a lot of different ways. The IT industry picking up a lot more widespread adoption in general, whereas AV is doing more and more things kind of crossing over with that. And we you could talk about duplication of services at a certain point. I mean, I would like to just kind of reiterate that I think that AV has, it touches all of these different aspects, and, we'd like to keep touching you, but it's frowned upon in a lot of places. So that fundamental question of is AV and IT, I think depending on which perspective you're coming from, you might have a different answer. I think AV, for the most part, would say, yes, we're part of IT. And to your point, Rachel, we have been for thousands of years, semantically, at a fundamental level.
Yeah.
Well, it was 10 minutes after the beginning of time. They took a break first.
Early Egypt, yeah.
The old caveman, he would whisper to the guy's ear, the woman there, and then she would yell it out to the crowd. So that was the first amplifier, right? That's how it worked. Right, it was just information delivery.
I didn't read that. Something tells me that may not be accurate.
That is literally an Exodus, Jamie. I'm just pointing this out. That is what Aaron. Okay. That is what Aaron did for Moses.
Okay. Well,
again, we're on topic now, you guys.
I'm trying to live fact check here, and that just seemed a little fishy.
Chris, I think the whole concept of is it or not, but there certainly is a lot of friction around it, right? As far as and is that when we say AV is IT, and you have IT being kind of created by IT folks for IT folks, and are we just kind of thrust into that just to kind of
I would say
create the friction of that?
It's relatively recent. It's in that kind of consumerization of technology. If you think, let's look at university AV, and as we talked about a few minutes ago, we're not pushing carts around anymore, though with COVID we are pushing carts, but for a different reason. We're not delivering materials via cart and say, here's your film strip and here is your VHS tape. Mm-hmm. But with this consumerization of technology, in the sense as technology has become cheaper and much more widespread, and technology has been expected, that same level of technology is now expected in all the kind of teaching and learning spaces, be they formal or informal, that has forced the IT industry to become more IT-ish, I guess, is that the right term? And there are those who have resisted it and those who have embraced it. And I think those who have embraced it, as we just said earlier, we've always been part of IT. Why are you not part of IT? But there are those who just kind of, they say, no, we're different. We do different. No, we do the same thing. It is the same thing and more. And so back to my argument, and I'll stand by it, that I think AV is the most IT of all the IT silos because we catch everything that covers the entire range.
Was it because we're just clever and made up of folks from like engineering backgrounds that are like, you know what? Fundamentally, I might just be lazy. And if I can do this more efficiently, wouldn't it be easier for me to not push that card around, just hanging on a network or something like that? And do we just exploit the ease in which networks and the ability that it gave us?
Well, I think that's absolutely. I think it is because we are fundamentally lazy, and the tools have already existed for us to use, right? So for programming, right, the days of, and we're starting to see it, right? The days of proprietary programming languages are going away. They're starting to say, wait, there's already languages. Let's just use them. Why am I making up something new? With the idea of streaming and video, you start looking at it and go, wait, there's already these cables. There's already these connectors. There's already these network switches. There's already these things. Why am I reinventing the wheel? Let's just use it. It's there. It's in place. It's already being manufactured. We don't have to, so I think some of it is the fact that the tools existed. We're just the folks who use it to, the little mad scientists. I mean, you see it with video games, right? I mean, how many great things happen in our world came from a video game? Like I made a graphics engine, so we made a better graphics engine. We made a better graphics card. We got higher pixels. It's just like all of a sudden we're stealing all their tools and we're crushing it together and making it fun.
You know what else we're doing?
Boring.
No, you know what else we're doing to it? And this is part of why I think IT looks at us weird or we don't get along with them sometimes is we take those tools and we get them as a standard and then we crush them up and we spit them out as something weird. Like, well, why did you do that? It was standardized and you guys just mucked it all up. And so IT people look at us like, why the hell would you want to do that on the network? And then we have to explain why, or why the hell is this running telnet? I don't know. I didn't make it. So let's fix it. Right. So we are the most non-standard entity of IT, even though we have our own standards, and standards means something else to us, right? Image size or, AVB or Dante or whatever you want to call a standard. So,
and our standards aren't as rock solid as IT standards.
No,
I think that's part of our issue is I agree that with a little bit of the conversation about, we've came in this different way from broadcast engineering, but a lot of us also came in from like theater background or something like that, where the job was, let's get it done and just jump in there and make it work. And for better or worse, we've carried that into our business practices and we're able to make things work, but we don't always follow the letter of every rule the way that the systematic nature of IT does. And I think that's caused a lot of friction as well.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. If you'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV Super Friends, then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
So welcome back. We just had an interesting point brought up right before our last break, and that maybe one of the reasons there is some friction, to keep it neutral, between IT and AV, or between various aspects of IT and AV, is that a lot of what we're doing in the last, say, maybe 10 years in AV is leveraging IT standards, taking established existing IT standards and using them for our own purposes. We manipulate those standards and are implementing them a little bit differently, but yet using a lot of the same hardware and software and standardized structured infrastructure. So could that be where we're seeing some of this pushback from IT to include the annoying AV people in their discussions?
Yeah, almost like you guys can't even do it right, so why are you even doing it at all?
Yeah, and it's, to me, it's kind of us trying to figure out how to deliver that low latency traffic, that audio and that video that has to arrive and be completed and all of that stuff, right? And, you know, it's hard to leverage the network, just a standard network and standard traffic to do that. Things are getting better. You know, Mark's brought up SRT, you know, NDI stuff. That's more standardized, doesn't require QoS necessarily, doesn't require any special network configuration. That's what pisses off IT teams, if you will. Security teams, if we're trying to control things over telnet, they don't. There's certain things that you're not supposed to do, right?
Yeah, using Bonjour the way we do.
Yeah, that too.
We don't actually.
Technically, it's
we don't do
DNS,
it.
but yes.
But I think we got into this, like, I'll come out of the old Soundman background, right? It was all about like carrying giant cables around, right? And moving all this massive copper. And then we got to a point where it's like, oh, I can just do it with this cat cable. It's gonna be so much easier. And then we took it further. I'm like, oh, we'll just do it on a switch, make it, packetize it, and we'll ship it around. And so I think you have the IT folks who are like, wait, that wasn't designed for you to do that, but we're just gonna kind of, we're gonna take it anyway, and we're gonna do this, and we'll have our own secret society of engineers working on it, and we'll find out how to squeeze every last bit of bandwidth out of it. And then it seems like voodoo to some IT folks.
So is it
right?
more upsetting
if
we ship our traffic around on their network, or if we get upset and make our own network and ship our traffic around? What's worse?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question.
And I think that
depends.
That's the crux of it, right? My network or yours?
Get that off my network. Also, you can't have your own network.
Right.
I think some of it's because
back to VGA.
The manufacturers of the products in our world always find some way to spin that packet, right? Mm-hmm. What do you mean there's an extra header on there? What? I mean, think of all the things that we do. Let's just look at the simple thing of transporting H.264.
Simple.
I mean, depending on who wraps it, who gets to tap it. But, you know, I was waiting for the chuckles. All you dirty SOBs. But seriously, I mean, sometimes you put a wrapper and it's just H.264, except that just some generic receiver can't get it. You know, that's why VLC, you know, and FFmpeg and all these things are out there. It's like I think it ticks them off that we find ways around.
Well, I think that it's the governance and it's the policing, right? Because if they gave us all of it, we would fill it up with bits and bytes of AV, and they would have nothing left over for YouTube or whatever it is left over, right? Because we'll take every little bit that you give us and jam it full of whatever resolution we can fit in there. And so I think it's more about policy, right? And what's the old saying, Chris? The first job of every good network engineer is to keep you off the network. Well, they're trying to keep us off the network because they know
primary
we'll take
job of every network engineer is to keep you off the network. That's right.
Right. And
I think
they're reluctant.
Part of it is the manufacturers themselves too. They're all competing with each other to become the standard. I know HDBaseT is an AV over IP, but that's something we created, and we can't even get a version of that everybody plays with. And so until something like Dante becomes the leader, I can understand why IT doesn't like what we're doing, because we're just a bunch of rebels out there, each doing their own thing.
If you do want to meet the folks from your IT department, go ahead and take that HDBaseT cable and plug it into your network. You will meet them really fast.
That's fun. Yeah.
You just plug your Dante straight into your corporate LAN or your campus LAN, and for most of you, Justin's
but that's
different,
okay.
But yeah,
we could do that.
For most of you, you'll get a quick response from your network team. So, all right. Well, speaking of networking, and Larry just mentioned it, that some things sound like they might be AV over IP, but they're really not AV over IP. We've been kind of bouncing some ideas around recently on what identifies AV over IP. That's kind of the big place where I think the AV world and IT world are kind of crashing into each other. We're getting our chocolate into their peanut butter. But at the same time, there's a lot of aspects to what some people might term AV over IP, so might nominally be that, but really probably shouldn't be considered that in more of a general use or best practice sense. So we've put together a little segment here that we like to call "You Might Not Be Using AV over IP If."
And I'll start us off here. If your network switch is still using the default username and password,
then you might not be using AV over IP.
That's right.
So if your AV over IP traffic doesn't leave the room, you might not be using AV over IP.
If your AV over IP traffic isn't touching the enterprise network, you probably aren't using AV over IP.
If your subnet starts with the number 192 or 169 or 168 or 207, doesn't matter. If it starts with anything in that realm, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you have to be in the room to plug into your network, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you have to add your own access ports, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you are buying layer 3 switches and running them as layer 2, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you're pulling your own copper, you might not be using AV over IP.
If you need a ladder to update your own device firmware that's 15 feet up in the air that you can't get to over fixed seating, even though it's PoE plus, which has happened to me, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you're shopping for a new matrix switch that has an IGMP setting, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you don't know the MAC addresses of all of your devices, you may not be using AV over IP.
If you have to hide your network switches on order forms by calling them PoE power supplies or audio system expanders, you might not be using AV over IP.
That's actually my favorite one.
Yeah, I do.
I think what I love about all of these is right now there's people yelling at their computers or their car
people
stereos.
hate this. Yeah, it's perfect.
So, well, there
And we don't
I think
care.
we've made a mess of this AV and IT discussion. We probably accomplished nothing, but clouded the works a little bit more. We'll save the final decision for a future discussion in 7 or 8 years. But yeah, work with your IT team. But if you need to, do your own thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's coming soon. IT, it's a thing.
Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.